The Korthak warfleet emerged from hyperspace like predators scenting blood. 3 massive dreadnoughts and a dozen escort vessels materialized in the void, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that had reduced countless worlds to ash. Commander Zethka stood on the bridge of the flagship, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical display with satisfaction. Target confirmed. Commander. His weapons officer hissed through mandibles that clicked with excitement. 1 small outpost, minimal energy signatures. This will be over quickly. Zethka's scaled lips pulled back in what passed for a smile among his species. The Korthak had been expanding their empire for 3 centuries, consuming every civilization they encountered. They were apex predators of the galaxy, and this remote mining station would be nothing more than another brief meal. What do we know about the inhabitants? Zethka asked, though he cared little for the answer. Dead was dead regardless of species. Unknown species, Commander. The outpost appears to be extracting rare minerals from the asteroid field. Scans show approximately 50 life forms. Primitive technology, minimal defenses. The commander's mandibles clicked in amusement. 50 beings against a war fleet designed to crack planets. It was almost insulting how easy this would be. Still, protocol demanded they follow standard procedure. Transmit the usual surrender demand, Zethka ordered. Give them 30 minutes to evacuate, then we reduce the station to scrap metal. The communications officer sent the message that had preceded the destruction of hundreds of worlds. It was always the same. Surrender immediately, abandon all possessions, and submit to Korthak rule. No species had ever refused. Fear was universal, after all. But as the minutes ticked by, something unexpected happened. Instead of panicked evacuation ships or desperate pleas for mercy, the outpost sent back a simple response that made the bridge fall silent. Negative. This is human territory. You are not welcome here. Zethka stared at the message display, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever simply said no. There were always negotiations, tears, attempts at bribery, or immediate flight. Never just a flat refusal. Humans. He said the word like it tasted foul. What are humans? His intelligence officer quickly accessed their databases. Unknown species, Commander. No records in our conquest archives. This appears to be our first contact with them. First contact, Zethka mused. That would make this even more satisfying. Breaking a new species was always entertaining. Scan their defenses again. I want to know exactly what kind of toys they're hiding. The tactical officer's mandibles clicked nervously. Sir, I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures now. It appears they have weapons, but the configuration is strange. I've never seen anything like it. Through the viewports, the human outpost looked deceptively peaceful. It was built into a large asteroid with docking bays and communication arrays extending from the rocky surface. Lights twinkled in observation windows, and there was something almost cheerful about its appearance. It certainly didn't look like a military installation. 30 minutes have elapsed, Commander, the weapons officer reported. No evacuation detected. What are your orders? Zethka studied the tiny outpost that dared to defy the might of the Korthak Empire. These humans would learn the price of refusing their betters. He would make their destruction slow and painful, a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. Begin the attack, he commanded. Standard bombardment pattern. I want that station reduced to particles. The warfleet's weapons charged with a sound like thunder. Particle beams and plasma cannons that could melt through battle armor, prepared to unleash devastation on the small outpost. The humans had made their choice, and now they would face the consequences. But as the first salvo launched toward the asteroid, something impossible happened. The space around the outpost suddenly filled with streaks of light, thousands of projectiles moving at incredible velocity. The Korthak weapons, designed to destroy cities, were met by a wall of metal that seemed to come from nowhere. What in the void was that? Zethka roared as his flagship shuddered under impacts. Sir, they're firing kinetic projectiles, solid metal, but at velocities approaching 10% light speed. The impact energy is... The tactical officer paused, double-checking his readings. Sir, each projectile carries the force of a tactical nuclear weapon. Alarms began blaring across the bridge as the human response intensified. What had seemed like a helpless mining station was revealing itself to be something far more dangerous. Hidden weapon emplacements emerged from the asteroid's surface, and the space around the outpost became a deadly maze of high-velocity death. Impossible, Zethka snarled. No primitive species could generate that kind of kinetic energy. Our intelligence was wrong. Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the humans, the communications officer announced, his voice trembling. Put it through. This time, the voice that came through the speakers was different. Calmer, but with an edge that made even Zethka's predatory instincts twitch with unease. Korthak vessels, this is Colonel Sarah Chen, commanding officer of Outpost Defiance. You have fired upon a human facility. This constitutes an act of war. You have one opportunity to withdraw from this system immediately, or we will respond with full military force. The bridge fell silent, except for the continued alarms warning of hull damage. Zethka couldn't believe what he was hearing. This Colonel Chen spoke as if her tiny outpost was a threat to his war fleet. The arrogance was staggering. Full military force? Zethka laughed, though the sound held less confidence than before. You have one small station against 3 dreadnoughts. Your delusions of strength are pathetic. Sir, the weapons officer interrupted urgently. I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the asteroid field. Whatever they're doing, it's big. Colonel Chen's voice came through the speakers again, and this time there was something in her tone that made the bridge crew exchange nervous glances. It wasn't fear or desperation. It was the voice of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. Commander Zethka, you seem to be operating under the assumption that Outpost Defiance is just a mining station. Let me correct that misunderstanding. Outpost Defiance is a forward military installation of the Terran Defense Force, and you, Commander, have just declared war on humanity. The tactical display suddenly exploded with new contacts. Energy signatures were appearing throughout the asteroid field, and they were massive. Whatever the humans had been hiding, they were about to reveal it. Commander Zethka watched in growing horror as his tactical display transformed from showing a simple asteroid field to revealing something that defied all logic. What he had assumed were ordinary space rocks were lighting up with energy signatures that dwarfed his own dreadnoughts. Report, he barked, his voice cracking with the first hints of panic. Sir, I'm detecting weapon systems embedded throughout the asteroid field. Massive railgun installations, missile silos, and something else. Something I don't recognize. The tactical officer's hands trembled as he worked his console. Commander, the asteroids themselves aren't asteroids at all. They're camouflaged weapons platforms. Colonel Chen's voice cut through the bridge chatter with cold precision. You see, Commander Zethka, humans learned long ago that the best defense is the one your enemy never sees coming. Welcome to the Cerberus defense grid. The space around Outpost Defiance suddenly erupted with activity. What had appeared to be innocent chunks of rock began rotating, revealing gun barrels the size of subway tunnels. Missile ports opened like deadly flowers blooming in the void, and energy weapons that had been dormant for years hummed to life with barely contained power. Impossible, Zethka whispered. Our scouts surveyed this system months ago. There was nothing here but asteroids and a small mining operation. Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see, Chen replied. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, Commander. We've learned a few tricks about deception. The first salvo from the Cerberus grid made the Korthak's initial bombardment look like fireworks. Railgun slugs traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through the shields of the escort vessels like they were made of paper. One destroyer simply ceased to exist as a tungsten projectile the size of a telephone pole turned its hull into expanding plasma. Evasive maneuvers. Zethka screamed, but his ships were designed for planetary bombardment, not fighting an enemy that could match their firepower. The massive dreadnoughts, so intimidating against helpless worlds, were sitting targets in the confined space of the asteroid field. Sir, we've lost 3 escorts. The humans are targeting our engines specifically. They're trying to disable us, not destroy us outright. That realization sent a chill down Zethka's spine. In Korthak warfare, you either won quickly or died quickly. An enemy that could disable your ships and take prisoners was an enemy that understood the true art of war. Return fire. All weapons, maximum intensity. The remaining Korthak ships unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons designed to melt continents focused their fury on the hidden weapons platforms. Particle beams that could crack moons swept across the asteroid field. For a moment, space itself seemed to burn with the intensity of their assault. But the humans had built their defenses well. Energy shields flickered to life around the weapons platforms, deflecting attacks that should have vaporized them. Where shields failed, the asteroids themselves absorbed the damage. their rocky exteriors providing natural armor that the Korthak had never encountered before. "Damage report," Zethka demanded. "Minimal effect, sir. The human installations are heavily armored and shielded. Our weapons are having limited impact." A new voice joined the communication channel, speaking with the crisp authority of someone accustomed to command. "This is Admiral Harrison, Terran Defense Force. Commander Zethka, you are currently engaged with a single outpost of the human military. I strongly suggest you reconsider your current course of action." Zethka's four eyes widened. "An admiral? For a single outpost?" His intelligence files had indicated this was a minor mining operation. But admirals didn't command mining stations. "Admiral Harrison," Zethka replied, trying to inject confidence into his voice. "I am Commander Zethka of the Korthak Empire. We have conquered over 200 worlds. Your small outpost cannot stand against the might of our fleet. Commander, you seem to be under the impression that Outpost Defiance is small. Let me share some information that might help you reassess the situation." The tactical display suddenly updated with new information, data that the humans were somehow feeding directly into their systems. Zethka stared at the readings in disbelief. Outpost Defiance wasn't built into a single asteroid. It was built into dozens of them, connected by underground tunnels and reinforced passages. The entire asteroid field was one massive military installation, disguised to look like a natural formation. The energy signatures he was seeing represented weapons that could threaten entire fleets. "This is impossible," he breathed. "The energy requirements alone." "Humans have been harnessing stellar energy for quite some time, Commander," Admiral Harrison explained. "Each weapon platform is powered by quantum fusion reactors. We could maintain this rate of fire for approximately 6 months without resupply." 6 months. Zethka's fleet carried enough ammunition for perhaps 6 hours of sustained combat. The humans were playing an entirely different game, one where they held all the advantages. "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently, "I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. Something big is coming through." The space around the asteroid field began to ripple as more ships emerged from hyperspace. But these weren't the massive, intimidating dreadnoughts that the Korthak favored. These human vessels were sleek, angular, and moved with a predatory grace that made Zethka's experienced eye narrow with recognition. These were warships built by people who understood combat. "Reinforcements?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "The Terran Defense Force maintains rapid response fleets throughout this sector," Admiral Harrison confirmed. "You are now facing the combined firepower of Outpost Defiance, the 3rd Fleet Battle Group, and approximately 40,000 metric tons of very unhappy human military hardware." The human fleet spread out in a formation that Zethka recognized from his military studies. It was an encirclement pattern, designed to cut off retreat and force a decisive engagement. But there was something different about how they moved, something that spoke of experience fighting enemies who might actually fight back. "Commander," Colonel Chen's voice rejoined the conversation, "I'm going to explain something about humans that your intelligence files probably missed. We are the only species in this galaxy that evolved from persistence hunters. Do you know what that means?" Zethka remained silent, but his tactical officer provided the answer with trembling mandibles. "Persistence hunters don't rely on overwhelming strength or speed. They track their prey relentlessly, wearing them down over time until the target collapses from exhaustion." "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "We've been tracking your fleet since you entered this system. We know your fuel capacity, your ammunition stores, and your tactical doctrine. We've been preparing for this engagement for the past 18 hours. The realization hit Zethka like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been caught off guard at all. They had been waiting, preparing, setting a trap that he had walked into with complete confidence. His intelligence had been worse than wrong. It had been deliberately fed false information. "This is Admiral Harrison with a final offer, Commander Zethka. Surrender your vessels immediately, and we will treat your crews according to the Geneva Conventions. Continue this engagement, and we will demonstrate why humanity has never lost a defensive war." Never lost a defensive war. The words echoed in Zethka's mind as he stared at the tactical display, showing his fleet surrounded by enemies who had turned an entire asteroid field into a weapon. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy that might actually be superior to the Korthak Empire. Commander Zethka's pride warred with his survival instincts as he stared at the tactical display. The Korthak Empire had never surrendered in its 300-year history of conquest. His ancestors would turn in their graves if he became the first to bow before an unknown species, but the alternative was looking increasingly suicidal. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered urgently, "the humans are powering up something massive. Energy readings are off the scale." Through the viewports, a section of the asteroid field began to glow with an ominous light. What had appeared to be a cluster of ordinary rocks was revealing itself as something far more sinister. The asteroids were moving, rotating into position like the chambers of a massive revolver. "What are they doing?" Zethka demanded. Colonel Chen's voice answered his question with chilling calm. "Commander, you're about to witness humanity's answer to the age-old question of what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. That installation you're looking at is called the Hammer of Sol." The name sent an involuntary shiver through Zethka's scaled hide. In Korthak culture, names carried power, and any weapon called a hammer was designed to crush things beyond recognition. "The Hammer of Sol is a mass driver," Admiral Harrison explained with the tone of a professor giving a lecture. "It accelerates a 10-ton tungsten projectile to approximately 15% the speed of light. The kinetic energy released on impact is equivalent to a moderate stellar flare." Zethka felt his four stomachs drop. 15% light speed. The math was simple and terrifying. Even his flagship shields couldn't withstand that kind of impact. "Nothing could. You're bluffing," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No species would build something that destructive. The energy requirements alone would bankrupt a system." "Humans have a saying, Commander," Chen replied. "We don't build weapons to fight the enemy we're facing today. We build them to fight the enemy we might face tomorrow." The Hammer of Sol was designed to stop Leviathan-class dreadnoughts. Leviathan-class? Zethka's blood ran cold. Those were theoretical super-dreadnoughts that existed only in the darkest nightmares of military planners. Ships so massive they could crack planets with their engines alone. No sane species would build weapons to counter threats that didn't exist, unless, of course, they knew something that the rest of the galaxy didn't. "Sir," his sensor operator called out in a voice tight with fear, "I'm detecting massive gravimetric distortions around that installation. Whatever they're charging up, it's warping local spacetime." The tactical display showed energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. The humans were somehow containing and directing forces that rivaled the output of small stars. The Korthak Empire's most advanced weapons looked like toys in comparison. "We could demonstrate the Hammer of Sol on that dead moon over there," Admiral Harrison offered helpfully, "just so you understand what you're dealing with." Before Zethka could respond, space around a barren satellite lit up with impossible energies. The tungsten projectile was invisible, moving too fast for any sensor to track, but its passage left a trail of distorted space that looked like a crack in reality itself. When the projectile struck the moon, the result was beyond anything in Zethka's experience. The satellite simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding cloud of superheated plasma that glowed like a newborn star. The shockwave, traveling through the quantum foam of space itself, made his flagship's hull ring like a bell. "Blessed ancestors," he whispered. The humans had just casually deleted a moon to make a point. What kind of species possessed that level of destructive capability and used it for demonstrations? "The good news, Commander," Chen continued conversationally, "is that we don't actually want to use the Hammer of Sol on your ships. The bad news is that if you continue this engagement, we won't have much choice." Zethka's tactical officer was frantically working his console, trying to find some weakness in the human defenses. "Sir, I'm detecting additional installations throughout the system. Energy weapons, missile platforms, what looks like... Are those minefields?" "Autonomous hunter-killer drones," Admiral Harrison confirmed. "About 10,000 of them, each one capable of tracking and destroying individual fighters. They've been powered down until now, but we can activate them if necessary. 10,000 hunter-killers, Zethka's escort fighters, his pride and joy, would last perhaps minutes against that kind of opposition." The humans weren't just well-armed. They were prepared for every possible contingency. "This is insane," he muttered. "What kind of species builds defenses like this for a single mining outpost?" "The kind that learned to survive in a galaxy full of things like the Korthak Empire," Chen replied without humor. "Commander, you're operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. Outpost Defiance isn't just a mining station. It's a forward observation post, designed to monitor this region for exactly the kind of threat you represent." The implications hit Zethka like a physical blow. The humans had known about the Korthak Empire all along. They had been watching, studying, preparing. This entire engagement was a trap, but not the kind he had initially thought. It wasn't a trap designed to destroy his fleet. It was a trap designed to gather intelligence about Korthak capabilities. You've been testing us, he realized with growing horror. Every military engagement is a learning experience. Admiral Harrison agreed. We now know the composition of your standard attack fleet, your tactical doctrine, and the limitations of your technology. This information will be invaluable for future defensive preparations. The human fleet began to move, not with the aggressive posturing of conquerors, but with the methodical precision of scientists conducting an experiment. They were studying his ship's movements, analyzing their weapons' performance, cataloging every aspect of Korthak military capability. Sir, his communications officer called out desperately, I'm receiving transmissions from the rest of the Empire. Our long-range communications are being jammed by the humans, but I managed to get a burst transmission through. High Command is demanding a status report. Zethka stared at the tactical display, where his mighty war fleet was completely surrounded by enemies who could destroy them with contemptuous ease. How could he possibly explain the situation to the Empire? How could he tell them that they had encountered a species that made the Korthak look like primitive savages? Commander? Admiral Harrison's voice cut through his thoughts. I'm going to make you an offer. Surrender your fleet, submit to debriefing, and we'll provide you with transportation back to Korthak space. Your crews will be treated well, and you'll be released once we've gathered the information we need. And if I refuse? The space around the Hammer of Sol began to glow again, and every human weapons platform in the asteroid field powered up simultaneously. Energy readings spiked to levels that made his sensors scream warnings about imminent system overload. Then we'll gather the information from your wreckage, Chen said simply. Commander, humanity doesn't make idle threats. We're offering you a chance to survive this encounter because we believe in mercy, but mercy has limits. Zethka looked around his bridge at officers who had served with distinction in dozens of campaigns. They were all staring at him with the same expression of barely controlled terror. These were veterans who had faced down planetary defense fleets without flinching, and now they were looking at him like drowning beings begging for rescue. Sir, his weapons officer said quietly, recommend immediate surrender. We cannot win this engagement. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. In the entire history of the Korthak Empire, no fleet commander had ever uttered those words and lived to serve again. But in the entire history of the Empire, no fleet had ever faced anything like humanity. You have 60 seconds to decide, Commander, Admiral Harrison announced. After that, we'll assume you've chosen to continue this engagement and we'll respond accordingly. Zethka closed his four eyes and tried to imagine explaining the situation to the Empire. A single human outpost had effortlessly neutralized a full war fleet. If this was what humans considered a minor defensive installation, what would their actual military bases look like? What kind of forces protected their home worlds? For the first time in his career, Commander Zethka was beginning to understand that the Korthak Empire might have finally encountered something it couldn't conquer. The silence on the bridge stretched like a taut wire as Zethka wrestled with the most difficult decision of his military career. Around him, his officers waited with barely concealed terror as the countdown to their potential annihilation ticked away. The tactical display showed human weapons systems charged and ready, each one capable of reducing his ships to their component atoms. 30 seconds. Commander, Admiral Harrison announced with the patience of someone who held all the cards. Zethka's hands trembled as he gripped the command rail. 300 years of Korthak supremacy had not prepared him for this moment. The Empire had never faced an enemy that could match their technology, let alone exceed it so dramatically. His tactical training, his experience, his very understanding of warfare had all become obsolete in the space of a single engagement. Sir, his intelligence officer whispered urgently, if we surrender, we'll be the first Korthak fleet in history to yield to an enemy. The Empire will consider us traitors. And if we don't surrender, we'll be the first Korthak fleet in history to be completely annihilated. His tactical officer countered, at least as traitors, we'll still be alive. The bridge erupted in heated whispers as his officers debated their impossible choice. Death with honor or life with shame. In Korthak culture, there was no choice at all. A warrior died fighting, no matter the odds. But as Zethka looked at the tactical display, he realized that dying here would accomplish nothing except providing the humans with target practice. His ship's destruction wouldn't even serve as a warning to the Empire, since the humans controlled all communications in this system. 10 seconds, Commander. Zethka made his choice. All ships power down weapon systems. Prepare for surrender. The words felt like poison in his mouth, but they were the only words that would keep his crews alive. Around the bridge, his officers stared at him with expressions ranging from relief to disgust. He had just done something that no Korthak commander had ever done, and he wasn't sure if history would remember him as a coward or a realist. Wise choice. Commander, Admiral Harrison said without any trace of mockery, all vessels maintain current positions and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to restart your weapon systems will be met with immediate destruction. Within minutes, human ships were docking with his vessels. Zethka watched through the viewports as sleek shuttles attached themselves to his flagship's hull like parasites. Soon he would meet these humans face to face, and he found himself curious about the species that had so effortlessly defeated the Empire's finest. The first human to enter his bridge was not what he had expected. Colonel Chen was shorter than most Korthak, with pale skin and dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command, but there was something else in her bearing that took Zethka a moment to identify. It was compassion. Commander Zethka, she said with a slight nod of respect. I'm Colonel Sarah Chen. Thank you for making the sensible choice. Zethka studied her carefully. In Korthak culture, conquerors gloated over their victories. They displayed trophies and humiliated their defeated enemies. But this human showed no signs of arrogance or cruelty. She seemed almost disappointed by how easily the engagement had ended. You speak as if you are familiar with my language, he observed. Humanity has been monitoring Korthak communications for several years. Chen replied matter-of-factly. We've had time to learn your language, study your culture, and understand your military capabilities. We know more about your empire than you might think. Several years. The implications were staggering. While the Korthak had been blissfully unaware of humanity's existence, the humans had been watching them, preparing for eventual contact. They had planned this engagement down to the smallest detail. How? Zethka asked. Our communications are encrypted with quantum protocols. Chen's expression suggested she was debating how much to reveal. Commander, quantum encryption is based on mathematical principles. Humans have been working with mathematics for a very long time. Breaking your codes was challenging, but not impossible. Behind her, other humans were efficiently taking control of his bridge systems. They moved with practiced precision, clearly following established protocols for boarding hostile vessels. This wasn't their first time capturing enemy ships, Zethka realized. They had done this before. What happens to my crew? He asked, the weight of command making him focus on their welfare rather than his own fate. They'll be treated according to the Geneva Conventions, Chen replied. Medical care, adequate food and housing, protection from harm. We're not barbarians, Commander. We don't punish soldiers for following orders. The Geneva Conventions. Another term Zethka didn't recognize, but the concept was clear enough. The humans had laws governing the treatment of prisoners. In Korthak culture, captured enemies were either enslaved or executed. The idea of treating them well was alien. Why? He asked. Why show mercy to those who would have destroyed you? Chen paused in her inspection of his bridge systems. Because we were once where you are now, Commander. Humanity fought countless wars before we learned that strength isn't measured by how many enemies you can destroy. It's measured by how many you can turn into allies. Turn enemies into allies. The concept was so foreign to Korthak thinking that Zethka struggled to process it. The Empire conquered through fear and overwhelming force. The idea of converting enemies into willing partners was revolutionary. You expect us to become your allies? He asked incredulously. Not immediately, Chen admitted. Trust takes time to build, especially after an encounter like this. But we've studied your species, Commander. Korthak are honorable warriors who value strength and courage. Those are qualities that humanity respects. A human technician approached Chen and spoke quietly in their language. Zethka's translation implants caught most of the conversation, something about security protocols and prisoner transportation. The efficiency of their operation was impressive, he had to admit. Commander, Chen said, turning back to him, Admiral Harrison would like to speak with you privately. He has some information that might interest you about the current state of the galaxy. Zethka followed her to a secured briefing room, where Admiral Harrison was waiting. The human was older than Chen, with gray hair and eyes that held the weight of long experience. He gestured for Zethka to sit, a courtesy that surprised the Korthak commander. "Commander Zethka," Harrison began, "I'm going to share some information with you that might change your perspective on recent events. Are you familiar with the Devourers?" The name sent ice through Zethka's veins. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories, though most considered them myths. The Devourers were supposed to be an ancient race that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. But those were just legends, weren't they? "The Devourers are myth," he said. Though his voice lacked conviction, Harrison activated a holographic display that showed a star map of the galaxy. Large sections were marked in red, indicating areas of space that had gone dark in recent years. The pattern was unmistakable and terrifying. "I'm afraid they're very real, Commander, and they're heading this way." The red zones on the map showed a progression of destruction moving steadily through the galaxy's outer rim. Entire sectors had gone silent, their stars extinguished or missing entirely. The scale of destruction was beyond anything in recorded history. "The Terran Defense Force has been tracking their movement for the past decade," Harrison continued. "At their current rate of advance, they'll reach inhabited space within 50 years. When that happens, every species in this galaxy will need to work together if we want to survive." Zethka stared at the map, his mind reeling. If this information was accurate, then every territorial dispute, every conquest, every war between species was meaningless in the face of this approaching threat. The Korthak Empire's expansion was nothing compared to the coming storm. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because humanity learned something important when we were still confined to a single world," Harrison replied. "United we stand, divided we fall. The Devourers are coming whether we're ready or not. The question is, will we face them as enemies fighting each other or as allies fighting together?" Zethka stared at the holographic display with growing horror as Admiral Harrison zoomed in on the red zones of destruction. What he saw defied comprehension. Entire star systems had been reduced to empty space, not just stripped of planets or life, but completely devoid of matter. Even the stars themselves had vanished, leaving behind voids that registered as absolute zero on all sensors. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Nothing can destroy a star completely. The energy requirements alone—" "We thought the same thing," Harrison replied grimly, "until we managed to get a probe to one of the affected systems. What we found changed our understanding of what's possible in this universe." The display shifted to show sensor data from a robotic exploration vessel. The readings made no sense to Zethka's experienced eye. Where a star should have been, there was something else. Not empty space, but something that seemed to actively consume reality itself. "Dark matter constructs," Harrison explained. "The Devourers don't just destroy matter and energy. They convert it into something that exists outside our normal understanding of physics. They're not conquering the galaxy. They're remaking it into something else entirely." Zethka's four stomachs churned as he processed this information. The Korthak Empire prided itself on its advanced technology, but they had never encountered anything that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. This was beyond warfare. This was cosmic horror on an unimaginable scale. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Humanity first detected the signs 15 years ago," Harrison said. "We noticed that long-range communications from certain sectors had gone silent. Initially, we assumed it was just natural stellar phenomena or civil wars. But when we investigated, we found something that challenged everything we thought we knew about the universe." The display changed again, showing footage from what appeared to be a human exploration vessel. The view was of a solar system, but wrong in every conceivable way. Planets hung in space like withered fruit, their surfaces covered in a substance that seemed to absorb light itself. The star at the system center flickered with unnatural colors, its fusion processes corrupted by something alien. "This was the Kepler 442 system," Harrison continued, "home to a thriving civilization called the Zenthari, population of approximately 12 billion. We had established trade relations with them just 2 years before this footage was taken." Zethka watched in fascination and horror as the recording showed structures emerging from the corrupted planets. They were geometric impossibilities, shapes that hurt to look at directly. As he watched, one of the structures extended something that could only be described as a tendril toward the dying star. When it made contact, the star's light changed from yellow to a sickly purple, The Devourers don't just consume matter, Harrison explained. They corrupt it, transform it into something that serves their purposes. We believe they're building something, but we have no idea what. Building what? Zethka asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. That's the question that keeps us awake at night, Harrison admitted. Our best scientists have theories, but they're all terrifying. Some think they're constructing a network that spans the galaxy. Others believe they're creating a bridge to another dimension. All we know for certain is that their expansion is accelerating. The implications hit Zethka like a physical blow. If humanity had known about this threat for 15 years, then everything they had done since then had been preparation for a war, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their advanced technology, their hidden installations, their careful observation of other species, it all made sense now. The Cerberus grid, he said with sudden understanding. You've been building defenses throughout the galaxy. 147 systems so far, Harrison confirmed. Each one designed to slow down the Devourer advance and gather intelligence about their capabilities. Outpost Defiance is just one node in a network that spans 3 sectors. Zethka felt a grudging respect for the human strategy. While other species had been fighting territorial wars and building empires, humanity had been preparing for an existential threat that most civilizations didn't even know existed. They weren't conquerors. They were guardians. Why reveal this to me, he asked. Why not simply eliminate the Korthak threat and continue your preparations? Harrison leaned back in his chair, and for the first time Zethka saw the weight of responsibility in the human's eyes. Because we can't do this alone, Commander. Humanity is advanced, but we're not miracle workers. The Devourers have consumed over 200 star systems. At our current rate of technological development, we might be able to slow them down, but we can't stop them. You want the Empire's help. We want everyone's help. Harrison corrected. The Korthak Empire, the Altarian Federation, the Crystalline Collective, every species with the capability to contribute to the defense effort. This isn't about human survival anymore. It's about galactic survival. The holographic display showed a new image. This one depicting what appeared to be a massive construction project in deep space. Human ships worked alongside vessels from dozens of different species, building something that dwarfed even the largest space stations. The Unity Project, Harrison explained. A joint effort to develop weapons and defenses capable of standing against the Devourers. We've already made significant progress, but we need more resources. More minds working on the problem. Zethka studied the image carefully. He could identify Korthak ship designs among the others, which meant that some members of the Empire were already working with humanity. This revelation sent shockwaves through his understanding of galactic politics. Some of your people are already involved, Harrison confirmed, reading his expression. Several frontier colonies chose to join the project after we provided them with evidence of the Devourer threat. They understood that survival trumps political allegiance. The weight of this information was staggering. Zethka had come to this system expecting a simple conquest. But instead, he had discovered that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. The Korthak Empire wasn't the apex predator it believed itself to be. It was just another potential victim of something far more dangerous. What would you need from the Empire? He asked, surprising himself with the question. Your manufacturing capabilities, Harrison replied immediately. Korthak shipyards are among the most efficient in the galaxy. Your expertise in weapons development could accelerate our defensive preparations by decades. Most importantly, your warrior culture could provide the backbone for a galactic defense force. A galactic defense force. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of conquering other species, the Korthak military would be protecting them. It went against everything the Empire stood for. But it also offered something that centuries of conquest had never provided. A purpose beyond mere expansion. You understand that I cannot speak for the Empire, Zethka said carefully. This decision would have to come from the High Command. Of course, Harrison agreed. But you can carry this information back to them. You can help them understand what's at stake. Colonel Chen's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, we finished securing the Korthak vessels. All crew members are accounted for and in good health. What are your orders? Harrison looked at Zethka with an expression that was part calculation and part hope. Commander, I'm going to make you an offer that goes against every principle of prisoner management. I'm going to give you a choice. What kind of choice? You and your crew can return to Korthak space immediately. With all the information we've shared today, your ships will be fully repaired and resupplied. In exchange, you carry our message to the High Command and help arrange formal diplomatic contact. Zethka blinked all four eyes in succession. You would trust us to honor such an agreement? Commander, you surrendered your fleet to save your crew's lives. That tells me you understand the value of mercy and pragmatism. Besides, Harrison smiled grimly, if you betray our trust, the Devourers will kill you just as dead as they'll kill us. Enlightened self-interest is a powerful motivator. 3 days later, Commander Zethka stood on the bridge of his flagship as it approached the outer perimeter of Korthak space. His ship had been completely repaired by human engineers, who had worked with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. More disturbing was how they had improved his vessel's systems during the repair process, adding enhancements that increased power output by 30%. Sir, his communications officer announced, we're receiving standard challenge codes from Border Station Gamma 7. They're requesting identification and purpose of visit. Zethka took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of not just his career, but potentially the entire empire. The data crystal in his hand contained everything Admiral Harrison had shared with him about the Devourer threat, along with formal diplomatic proposals for an alliance that would have been unthinkable just days ago. Transmit our identification. Request immediate priority communication with High Command. Authorization code Omega Prime 7. Omega Prime 7 was reserved for threats to the Empire's existence. Using it would trigger immediate attention from the highest levels of government, but it would also put Zethka's entire crew under suspicion of treason if his report was deemed unacceptable. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, the crew is prepared to support your report. We all witnessed what the humans showed us. Zethka nodded gratefully. His officers had struggled with the implications of their encounter, but they had ultimately reached the same conclusion he had. The Devourer threat superseded all other considerations. Political loyalty meant nothing if there was no empire left to serve. The response from High Command came within hours, faster than Zethka had expected. His ship was ordered to proceed directly to the capital world of Korthan Prime, where he would present his findings to the Supreme War Council. The tone of the message suggested that his use of the Omega Prime code had caused considerable alarm in the highest circles of government. During the 3-day journey to the capital, Zethka reviewed the human data repeatedly, trying to find flaws or deceptions that might explain away what he had witnessed, but the evidence was overwhelming and internally consistent. The mathematical models, the sensor data, the documented progression of the Devourer advance, it all painted a picture of an approaching catastrophe that dwarfed anything in recorded history. His crew had been quietly spreading word of their encounter throughout the ship, and Zethka could sense the change in their attitude. Where once they had been confident conquerors, now they were something else entirely. They were survivors who had glimpsed the true nature of the universe and found it wanting. Korthan Prime dominated the view screen as they approached the capital world. The planet was a monument to Korthak military might, its surface covered with sprawling military academies, weapons factories, and the towering spires of government buildings. Orbital defense platforms bristled with enough firepower to reduce continents to ash, and patrol fleets maintained constant vigilance against potential threats. But after seeing what humanity could accomplish with a single outpost, Zethka found himself viewing his homeworld's defenses with new eyes. They were impressive by conventional standards, but woefully inadequate for the kind of enemy that was approaching. The Devourers wouldn't be stopped by particle cannons and shield generators. Supreme War Council convening in 1 hour, came the official notification. Commander Zethka to report immediately upon arrival. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater carved from a single piece of black stone, designed to intimidate those who appeared before it. 12 members of the Supreme War Council sat in elevated positions, their scarred hides and battle decorations testament to lifetimes of military service. At the center sat War Master Thekvor, the supreme commander of all Korthak forces and the most feared warrior in the Empire. Commander Zethka. Thekvor's voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. You stand before this council accused of the gravest possible offense. You surrendered a war fleet to an unknown enemy without authorization. Explain yourself. Zethka activated the holographic projector he had been given permission to bring, displaying the star map that Admiral Harrison had shown him. The red zones of devourer destruction appeared in the air above the council chamber, causing several members to lean forward with interest. War Master, honorable council members, I present evidence of a threat that makes our territorial disputes irrelevant. The enemy I encountered was not our primary concern. They were preparing for something far worse. For the next 2 hours, Zethka presented everything he had learned. The Devourer advance, the corruption of star systems, the Unity project being undertaken by multiple species. He showed them footage of the twisted geometries that had once been thriving worlds, and explained the mathematics behind the enemy's expansion pattern. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. War Master Thekvor stared at the holographic display with an expression that Zethka had never seen before. It was fear, carefully controlled but unmistakably present. These humans, Thekvor said finally, they possess weapons capable of destroying our fleet, yet they chose to spare you. Why? Because they need allies, War Master. The Devourers cannot be fought by any single species, no matter how advanced. The humans understand that survival requires cooperation. Cooperation, another council member spat. The Korthak Empire does not cooperate. We conquer. With respect, Councillor Vexthan, Zethka replied, what will we conquer when the Devourers have consumed every star in the galaxy? The humans are offering us a chance to fight for something greater than territory. They're offering us a chance to fight for existence itself. War Master Thekvor stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. You speak of fighting alongside species we have considered inferior. You ask us to abandon 3 centuries of imperial doctrine. This is not a decision to be made lightly. No, War Master, it is not. But it is a decision that must be made. The Devourers will reach our borders within 50 years. When they arrive, all our military might will be useless unless we have learned to work with others. The debate that followed was intense and often heated. Some council members advocated for immediate alliance with humanity, while others called for Zethka's execution as a traitor. But gradually, as the evidence was examined and re-examined, a consensus began to emerge. Commander Zethka, Thekvor said finally, you have presented us with information that, if accurate, changes everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. The council will deliberate on this matter for 3 days. During that time, you and your crew will remain under house arrest pending our final decision. As guards escorted him from the chamber, Zethka felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had done everything he could to convince the council of the threat they faced. Now it was up to them to decide whether the Korthak Empire would stand with the galaxy against the coming darkness, or face annihilation alone. That night, confined to quarters in the government complex, Zethka stared up at the stars visible through his window. Somewhere out there, the Devourers continued their inexorable advance, consuming reality itself and converting it into something alien and hostile. Somewhere else, human outposts like Defiance maintained their vigilant watch, preparing for a war that would determine the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. He thought about Admiral Harrison's words about united they stand, divided they fall. For the first time in his life, Zethka found himself hoping that the Empire would choose unity over pride. Because if they didn't, there might not be an Empire left to be proud of. 6 months after Commander Zethka's fateful encounter at Outpost Defiance, the galaxy had changed in ways that few could have imagined. The Supreme War Council's deliberations had lasted not 3 days but 3 weeks, as the full implications of the Devourer threat became clear. When they finally reached their decision, it sent shockwaves throughout Korthak space and beyond. The Empire would join the Unity project. Zethka stood on the observation deck of the massive construction facility designated Unity Station Alpha, watching as Korthak heavy cruisers worked alongside human destroyers and Altarian science vessels. The sight would have been unthinkable just months ago, but necessity had forged alliances that politics never could. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral Harrison's voice came from behind him. The human had become something of a friend over the past months, their shared understanding of the threat creating a bond that transcended species barriers. 6 months ago, I would have called this scene impossible, Zethka admitted. Korthak warriors taking orders from alien commanders, sharing our most advanced technologies with former enemies. And now? Zethka gestured toward the construction project taking shape beyond the viewports. The Aegis defense platform was a marvel of collaborative engineering. incorporating the best technologies from dozens of species. Korthak armor plating covered a human quantum reactor core, while Altarian shield generators protected weapon systems designed by the crystalline hive minds of Sector 7. Now I see it as our only hope. The platform was massive, easily the size of a small moon, but it was just one of 50 such installations being constructed throughout the galaxy. Each one was positioned at strategic points along the projected Devourer advance route, designed to slow their progress and gather intelligence about their capabilities. The first contact with Devourer forces occurred 3 days ago, Harrison said quietly. Defense Platform Gamma 1 engaged a scout formation at the edge of Sector 12. Zethka felt his blood run cold. Despite all their preparations, actually facing the Devourers remained his worst nightmare. What happened? The platform held for 18 hours before it was overrun. But in those 18 hours, we gathered more intelligence about Devourer combat capabilities than we'd managed to collect in 15 years of observation. Harrison activated a portable holographic display, showing sensor data from the engagement. Zethka studied the readings with a growing sense of dread. The Devourer vessels moved in ways that defied physics, phasing in and out of normal spacetime like ghosts. Their weapons didn't just destroy matter. They seemed to unravel the quantum structure of reality itself. How many casualties? Zethka asked. None, Harrison replied, surprising him. We evacuated the platform when it became clear the defenses wouldn't hold. Every member of the crew made it to the escape pods. That was another change the Alliance had brought. In the old days, Korthak military doctrine would have demanded that defenders fight to the death rather than retreat. But humanity had taught them that preserving trained personnel was more important than abstract concepts of honor. What did we learn? Harrison's expression grew grim. That we're not ready. The Devourers are more advanced than our worst-case scenarios predicted. Their technology operates on principles we don't understand, possibly can't understand with our current level of scientific knowledge. The implications were staggering. Despite the combined efforts of dozens of species, despite technological advances that had seemed impossible just months ago, they were still outclassed by an enemy that viewed the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. However, Harrison continued, we also learned something encouraging. The Devourers are not invincible. Platform Gamma 1's weapons did damage their vessels before being overwhelmed. It wasn't enough to stop them, but it was a start. Through the viewport, Zethka could see work crews installing the latest generation of weapons on Unity Station Alpha. The design incorporated lessons learned from the Gamma 1 engagement, along with theoretical weapons that pushed the boundaries of known science. The quantum disruptor array, Harrison explained, following his gaze. Instead of trying to destroy Devourer vessels with conventional weapons, it attempts to destabilize the quantum fields that allow them to phase shift. If it works, it should force them to remain in normal spacetime where conventional weapons can engage them. And if it doesn't work, then we'll learn something new about their capabilities and design better weapons for the next station. That was humanity's approach to the Devourer threat in a nutshell. Adapt, learn, and never stop fighting. It was a philosophy that had infected the entire Alliance, giving hope to species that had never faced an existential threat before. Commander Zethka to the command center. Came an announcement over the station's communication system. Priority communication from Korthan Prime. Zethka made his way to the command center, where a holographic projection of War Master Thekvor was waiting. The Supreme Commander looked older than when Zethka had last seen him, the weight of leading the Empire into uncharted territory evident in his bearing. Commander, Thekvor said without preamble, the High Council has approved the deployment of the 7th Battle Fleet to Unity Station Beta. You will assume command of all Korthak forces in that sector. The appointment was a surprise, but a welcome one. Zethka had been promoted to Fleet Commander in recognition of his role in bringing the Empire into the Alliance. More importantly, he would finally have a chance to put human tactical innovations to the test with Korthak personnel. I am honored by the Council's confidence. War Master, the honor is earned, Commander. Your actions at Outpost Defiance saved not just your crew, but potentially the entire Empire. The alliance with humanity has already provided us with technological advances that would have taken centuries to develop independently. It was true. Korthak shipyards were now producing vessels that incorporated human shield technology and Altarian propulsion systems. The new hybrid designs were faster, stronger and more versatile than anything the Empire had previously fielded. "What are my orders regarding the Devourer threat?" Zethka asked. "Hold the line," Thekvor replied simply. "Buy time for the science teams to develop more effective weapons. Learn everything you can about enemy capabilities, and if necessary, make them pay for every light year they advance." After the communication ended, Zethka remained in the command center, studying tactical displays that showed the current state of the galactic defense effort. Red markers indicated systems that had fallen to the Devourers, while blue markers showed Alliance defensive positions. The pattern was clear. They were losing ground steadily, but the rate of loss was slowing as new defenses came online. Admiral Harrison joined him at the tactical display. "The evacuation of Sector 15 is proceeding ahead of schedule," he reported. "We'll have all civilian populations relocated before the Devourers reach the outer systems." Saving civilian lives had become a priority equal to military considerations. The Alliance had learned that every person saved was a potential contributor to the war effort, whether as a scientist developing new weapons or a worker building defense platforms. "How long do we have?" Zethka asked. "Current projections suggest the main Devourer force will reach our primary defensive line in 18 months. That gives us time to complete the Aegis network and deploy the new weapon. Systems currently in development. 18 months to prepare for a war that would determine whether intelligent life would continue to exist in the galaxy." It seemed like an impossibly short time, but Zethka had learned to appreciate what could be accomplished when diverse species worked together toward a common goal. "Admiral," he said finally, "when this war began, I was convinced that the Korthak Empire was the pinnacle of galactic civilization. We believed that might made right, that conquest was the natural order of things. And now?" Zethka gestured toward the viewport where ships from a dozen different species worked together on humanity's survival. "Now I understand that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy but from the willingness to protect. The humans didn't defeat us at Outpost Defiance. They taught us what we could become if we chose cooperation over conquest." Harrison smiled, the expression carrying hope and determination in equal measure. "Commander, I think we're going to be just fine." Outside the viewport, the stars continued to shine, and throughout the galaxy, the children of 100 different worlds worked together to ensure those stars would keep shining for generations to come. The Devourers were coming, but they would find the galaxy united and ready to fight for its very existence.